Welcome to Demystifying Iran. Since 1979, the Islamic Republic of Iran has been one of the most persistently analyzed yet intentionally misunderstood actors on the world stage. Dominant narratives from Western and oil and gas-funded Arabic and English media often portray it through the lens of crisis, irrationality, and danger. We must move beyond these media outlets and examine their major myths about the country and its allies, and to present a coherent understanding of Iran's resilience, as well as its sophisticated culture and politics. In Western discourse on Iran, we seldom hear from Iranians themselves. Iranians living inside Iran are not usually a part of the conversation. If they are included, which is more likely in some regional media outlets, they are often labeled as close to the regime, which is of course a slur that would never be used to describe almost anyone else, especially if they're affiliated with a regional family dictatorship or if they're Western. Iran's story is narrated by others, by foreign politicians, external security analysts, and a chosen group of Iranians living abroad whose worldview was shaped by what they like to call exile decades ago. Their lifestyles often depend on funding from Washington, London, Paris, Berlin, Abu Dhabi, Doha, Tel Aviv, or some Zionist oligarch. This disconnect between the abnormal Iran described to us and the normal Iran understood by most of its own people is the root of a persistent failure to comprehend. We need to explore this external narrative and introduce the perspectives it has intentionally excluded. This is vital because there is no accountability among the promoted experts, academics, and their think tanks. Their predictions about all things Iranian, including Iran's forever imminent collapse, have been repeated for so many years. One would assume that elites in the West would question them about their failed predictions and analyses, but they don't. For decades, many have described an Iran in perpetual crisis, often on the brink of chaos. Then, without embarrassment, sometimes in the next breath, they narrate Iran's growing threat to regional and even global stability, an unresolvable paradox that only seems to make sense when discussing Iran. Perhaps nowadays Russia can be added to the list. We're told that they failed in Ukraine, but also that they want to invade Europe. This only seems coherent to Iran's ill-informed antagonists because of the enormous reservoir of Orientalist knowledge produced over centuries, but especially after the Islamic Revolution. For the ignorant, such contradictory statements make sense because they are all similar in their dark and negative portrayals. A nation defined by conspiracy, repression, abnormality, and rage.
President Trump has called for Iran's unconditional surrender amid this growing conflict with Israel.
אין לי ספק שזה משטר שרוצה לחסל אותנו, רוצה לחסל את קיומנו. ולכן יצאנו למבצע הזה, לסלק את שני האיומים הקונקרטיים על קיומנו.
Sanctions, high inflation and high unemployment have led many of Iran's young and educated to look abroad for opportunity.
Opposition in that country has been repressed for many years.
How many people live in Iran, by the way? I don't know the population. At all? No, I don't know the population. You don't know the population of the country you seek to topple?
There's an idea from the outside, I certainly had it, that Iran, it's a place of mad mullahs and nuclear bombs and that's it. And you get there and ordinary people are living pretty ordinary lives.
The dominant stories are not organic reports. They are constructs, channeled through a narrow set of aligned sources in Washington, London, Doha, Tel Aviv, Berlin, Paris, Abu Dhabi, and other capitals where the empire wields enormous influence. They are Westocentric narratives, but mimicked by their regional and NATO allies. Nevertheless, these constructs attempt to silence the complex reality of the 90 million people who have built a society within Iran's borders over the last half a century. Decades of Western, regional, and Zionist discourse have shrunk Iran's entire identity, its history, its culture, its people, into a menacing two-dimensional abstraction: a nuclear site, terrorism, and mad mullahs. This dehumanization did more than slander a nation. It created a permissive environment where international law could be suspended and sovereignty violated. The 12-day war stands as a critical case study, a direct, bloody example of how the demonization of the other actively constructs the moral vacuum necessary for aggression and criminality. When a civilization is reduced to a cartoon, its people become acceptable casualties. The ridiculous U.S. claim that the Venezuelan government is led by narco-terrorists is a similar example, a narrative built upon years of disinformation, founded on a broader Eurocentric and racist reservoir of knowledge that otherizes Venezuelans, a narrative that justifies murder and provides an aura of legitimacy to an illegal war. This despite the U.S. Drug Enforcement Administration's own rejection of the notion of substantial drug trafficking from Venezuela. Our purpose should be to break this loop, to correct this asymmetry by introducing internal and authentic Iranian perspectives. We must move beyond the recycled talking points from Washington, London, Tel Aviv, and Doha. We must engage directly with the historical and political frameworks that exist in Iran. The voices of Iran's policymakers, military strategists, scholars, and ordinary citizens need to be allowed to explain their reality in their own terms. You cannot claim to analyze a nation if you're not listening to its own voices. Only by bridging the gap can a more accurate and perhaps less perilous dialogue begin.